Hello, welcome back to the International People and Culture Week 2025. It seems like we were away for quite a while with a long weekend break in the UK, but this is panel three. We are bringing you live from different jurisdictions, wherever you're joining us from, whatever time zone you're joining us from. Say hello, tell us your name, tell us your designation, and tell us more importantly how you're making people and culture everybody's business at your workplace. I'm Jonathan, I'm the manager at the PCA, or the People and Culture Association, which is a membership think tank for global professionals, people and culture leaders who join us from different parts of the globe. So you should be joining us as a member very, very soon because this is a place where you get to connect. We meet as members every once a month to discuss insights, trends, successes, challenges that we are facing in the people and culture space. It's a great place to network and get to know what other professionals are doing in the space in their own jurisdictions. And so you can join us as a member for free now. All you got to do is scan that barcode, or you could drop us a line at info@peopleprofessionals.org, and I can send you some more details. An easier way to do that is just scan that barcode. The membership is now free. So come and join us on these conversations, and we get to have some really fantastic insights from different parts of the globe. Um, Today, of course, the session is anchored by the TCM Group CEO and the president of the PCA, David Little, who, of course, is also an author of Managing Conflict and Transformational Culture and is soon working on his book called People and Culture, which is due to be released this autumn. So we're going to be hearing a lot more about that as well today from David. But very exciting, and I'm sure he'll touch upon this a little later today, is also this called Conversations Coach, which is another interesting product coming out of the TCM headquarters. David, thank you so much for anchoring the session for us today. But joining David on this conversation are five fantastic panelists, and I want to quickly introduce you to them. Joining us from different time zones, in fact, right from 8:30 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon today. So if you're joining from the respective time zones of our speakers, as I said, drop in a line, say hello in the comment section on LinkedIn, and we'll get your comments as well lined up live on the screen. Quick hello to Mara Metzeler, who's joining us from Kuala Lumpur today, but she's originally based in the Netherlands. She is the HR Transformation Manager, or was HR Transformation Manager at Cardano Department some time ago, but an international people and professional who has done some fantastic work in the space. And she's going to be coming to you with some fantastic and wide insights from all the experience that she brings as a people and culture professional. Next up, I want to introduce you to Olia Yakizuma, who is the People and Culture Director at Switchy. Of course, Olia joining us from London. She brings tremendous experience once again in this place of people and culture. Olia, thank you so much for joining us once again today. Next up, I want to say hi to Khanzada Timur Khan, who's joining us from Dubai. He is the Director of People and Culture at Philip Morris International. Khanzada, thank you so much for joining us once again on today's panel. I want to quickly say hello to, of course, Hadar Cohen, who's joining us once again from Israel. She is the PNC lead at Ridweli Group. Of course, thank you so much for joining us live on this panel at Making Culture Everybody's Business. And last but no means the least, Mark Jones joining us once again from the UK. He is the People and Culture Director at Benign Healthcare. Mark, thank you so much for joining us from the UK today as well. Some great conversation. I can't wait to dive into all that. But before that, I just want to quickly introduce you to our sponsor, the Resolution Framework, which is once again the brainchild of David, who created this many years ago, and now it's a free stream for someone who wants to download the Resolution Framework. There's so much more we want to talk about in terms of making our workplaces better. Gone are the days where we talk about grievance in terms of basically planetary solutions. Now we're talking about it from a restorative place where we can resolve disputes, resolve conflicts from a collaborative space. And I might be the poster boy on that screen right now, but I'm not the person handling it. Let me tell you that. The person handling that is Roxanne, who is coming to us live from the TCM headquarters. Roxanne, of course, is the Customer Success Manager with the Resolution Framework, and she's going to be soon sharing with you what's happening in the world of Resolution Framework. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Roxanne, who is going to be sharing with us a little bit more about Resolution Framework. Roxanne, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. There we go. And welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm excited to be able to support, and it's great to have the Resolution Framework as today's sponsor. So I just sort of wanted to touch on 4 key things in the next few minutes. The problem with current HR processes and how the Resolution Framework ties into all of that, what justice means to us at TCM, a few kind of best practices or the ways customers are working with the Resolution Framework, and why so many organizations are, thinking about it and wanting to look into it and download it. So the Res Framework, just a quick introduction to it, is a people-friendly alternative to traditional HR processes. It's designed to resolve disputes and develop constructive relationships and encourage positive conversations. It's rooted in restorative, as Jonathan mentioned, and transformative justice, focusing on fairness, healing, and learning. So we all know that traditional HR processes can be a bit broken. And I know that David often talks about it in, just how broken they are, and is very passionate about this. And he's quite right. They're rigid and adversarial and time-consuming, and they can do more harm than good very often. So according to CIPD, over 15% of employees are estimated to be involved in a workplace conflict each year. And the way organizations respond to that conflict can either build trust or destroy it. And that's where the Resolution Framework comes in. It's not just another policy. It's a whole system designed to change the way we think about people policies and procedures. So instead of raising a grievance against, we are asking for requests for resolution for. Instead of warnings, we're giving reminders. It puts the person before the process and encourages adult-to-adult dialogue over litigious procedures. It starts with something we call local resolution, that informal, early-stage conversation, and hopefully the issue will be solved there and then. But if not, this can then move on to tools like our request for resolution form and resolution index, and that's one of the cores of the Resolution Framework. And those both help organizations triage cases and recommend the most human response, from mediation to coaching, or if necessary, a formal route. So it's ACAS compliant, it's practical, and most importantly, it's kind. So for us, justice at TCM isn't just about what happens, it's about how it happens and who it happens with. There are 5 types of justice: procedural, distributive, retributive, restorative, and most importantly, transformative. So transformative justice asks, what caused this conflict? What needs healing? How do we learn and grow from this together? So it means empowering people to speak up and be heard and take part in shaping their own outcomes. It's less about blame and punishment and more about trust and safety and growth. And it works. Statistics from Pollock Peacebuilding tell us that resolving conflict early through conversations that promote transformative justice helped employees understand their colleagues better, improve relationships, and even find better solutions to challenges. So it's really impactful. Just to quickly touch on what customers are doing with the RF at TCM, a good best practice example is Next. They adopted the Resolution Framework last year and made sure to focus on stakeholder engagement every step of the way. So by the end of it, they had massive support from all levels of employees, and their disciplinary cases dropped by 48%, which shows not just a process win, but a culture shift. And getting that stakeholder engagement is a massive part of helping people understand and buy into that culture change. We're also seeing more investment in training, not just on the framework itself, but on how to have quality conversations and handle strong emotions with care, with a coaching mindset, or on the different routes to resolution that are out there. And you can see them on the screen, from early resolution to team facilitation. Instead of your traditional agreements or disciplinary, they think about things like coaching or mediation. So it's not just about the tools or the processes. It really is about putting people first. And why are people interested in the resolution framework? Why are they wanting to download it? Well, because it works. And as Jonathan said, it's free. So it's really about you all being able to explore and learn about it. TCM has spent over 10 years developing and refining this framework with clients across all different sectors. And now it's open source. So it's TCM's way of making sure any organization, big, small, can handle complaints, conduct, and conflict in a more human, values-led, cost-effective, and better for time management. So if you're curious, the QR code is on the screen, or you can download it directly from our website, and I will be putting a few links in the chat shortly. And of course, we are always happy to talk to you about it and discuss how it could work in your context. So that's just a quick introduction and a bit about what we're seeing at the moment at the resolution framework. There's a real appetite for change. So HR teams and leaders are looking for something that aligns better with their values, builds real trust, and helps people feel heard and not processed. So thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking to you all.
Thank you, Roxanne. I think the highlight there was what you said about putting the person before the process. I think that's beautiful. Another beautiful way to summarize the resolution framework. Thank you so much. The resolution framework, of course, is the sponsor for today's panel, where we're going to be talking about processes and justice in the HR space. I'm going to now hand it over to David to lead us into the next segment and maybe invite our speakers to talk about making culture everybody's business. Yeah. David, over to you.
Amazing, Jonathan. Thank you so much. And thank you, Roxanne. I think the standout for me there was heard, not processed. I love that. What a lovely way to make people feel. And welcome, everyone. Welcome to today's International People and Culture Week global panel. It was incredible. What an incredible stellar lineup we have today. This is our third panel conversation. I've learned so much about the power of people and culture and how we can make culture everybody's business in our organizations. It's been a phenomenal International People and Culture Week. And Jonathan, huge thank you to you for all of your support making this happen. It's been really, really quite an incredible, powerful, moving experience. So today's conversation, we're focusing again on how we make culture everybody's business. But Roxanne set today's topic in context, because we're going to really dig into the area today as well of justice in our workplaces. And just from my own perspective, I talk a lot about culture and HR transformation and people and culture more widely. And people often say to me, David, if you could just distill culture into one word, just one word, what would that one word be? And I always come back to the word justice. It's about how do I feel when we fall out, when I disagree, when I make a mistake, when I speak truth to power, when someone speaks truth to my power, when there's a problem, a challenge, or an issue. And how I feel I've treated at that moment. Is it just? Is it fair? Is it safe? Is it supported? Am I included in engaged in the decision-making process? Becomes a defining feature of how I feel about our workplaces and how I feel about work. And of course, feelings and behaviors and how they aggregate to create the climate of our teams and the culture of our organizations becomes then the defining feature of our organization. Either culture is the greatest asset we have, or indeed for some organizations, it becomes a significant liability. So I'm really excited today to have such a wonderful panel of speakers who are talking about their own work in the area of people and culture more widely. Of course, we will also be focusing in today into some of those areas around how does it feel to be at work and how does it feel to address some of the issues we're talking about. So Olia, a very welcome, good morning, Olia. Welcome, good morning, and thank you for being part of today's International People and Culture Week panel.
Hi, good morning, everybody. That woke me up even more at this lovely 8:45 in the morning, the good morning message from you. I'm really happy to be here. I am a people director at Switchy at the moment. I lead on aspects of employee journey. So that's from recruitment to retention, developing people, engaging people throughout, and of course, building the systems and the cultural frameworks that kind of support the whole organism of the company, so to speak. I have been doing this for about 9 years now, and always in tech scale up businesses. I love people strategy so much just because it gives me kind of this ability to connect what I want to do with people and how I want to make people feel with the impact that the business wants to create long term. And kind of this connection between the two things could be quite elusive, but I find real kind of motivation in finding this connection and then putting it through all of that people strategy and systems to get there. But overall, the other reason why I really care about culture is because I'm very passionate about employee happiness and well-being. I use my coaching and my mentoring skills to support and empower people. So love working with people of any seniority and being able to support them, guide them, be that rock they need sometimes when things get tough at work, or when there is the learning curves or journeys that people take through their work life cycle, essentially. I'm also a founder of the Modern Employer podcast, and this is my baby for the last almost 5 years, where I bring different people leaders to talk about progressive people practices and then just publish it up to the world. It's an absolutely free thing, and it's a side hobby, and I love doing that because then I can talk about some exciting stuff somebody else has done or believes in that has practical tips and advice for all of the other people out there that they can grab and kind of use the next day. So something really practical and cool. And I love that as well, because being able to learn from other people and being able to be a part of this panel today, I'm surely going to learn something else from all of you here, and I can't wait for that. Taking through kind of talking more about learning from other people. I'm also a co-founder of a Slack community of about 1,500 members. And that community is called People Stories. So check it all out, you. I will love to see you there later. But the People Stories community is all about building those amazing employee experiences. And everybody there kind of talks about how we can help each other and asks questions and different things. I love the world of work, and kind of as a psychology graduate, I actually wanted to be a counseling psychologist, but I couldn't do it because it's very expensive to study in this country. So what kind of I did instead, and this is how I sleep good at night, is I tell myself, but you are a people leader. You can still support people through other ways. And with that, I did some more certifications. So I've become a transformational coach, so I can coach people through kind of their journeys at work. I've also done a certification to be a chief happiness officer, to look at how to make people happy at work, mental health first aid, and UK employment law, of course, as well. I've seen that there is a lawyer, an employment lawyer watching us today live. Hi to you. I really admire the work that you do. And yeah, my mission really is just to make every employee's experience a fulfillment experience at work. So learning here from all of you today surely will give me some more ammunition to the mission.
Alia, thank you so much. What a lovely walk through your experience and also your passion and vision. I love the Chief Happiness Officer, Monica. That just sounds amazing, of bringing happiness into our organizations. And I was curious, Alia, you talked earlier about sort of systems and strategy. And I think sometimes when we think about systems and strategy, it might feel quite dry and quite objective driven. It's about driving these big corporate objectives or creating these sort of bureaucratic systems. And I just wondered, through the lens that you're working, how do you develop people-centric strategies, and how do you build systems where you have people at the heart of them? Are there any considerations that you bring, or that you think that organizations can be bringing in terms of that that evolution and design work that you do?
That's a really solid question. Thank you so much for that. And I love talking about this, and especially it's quite great to talk about this with this panel today, because we span such a large kind of number of cultures also on this call that we work for. I think for me, if you're designing a people-centric system, you need to know your people that you are designing it for. People-centric system is going to be so different from Hadar's people-centric system or Timur's people-centric system. It's just so different. So one of the top things I would always do is actually learn and understand who are the people that I need to design anything for, from overall organizational system, performance management frameworks, culture frameworks, compensation frameworks, what makes this people understand and tick and kind of come on the journey with the business. That's what's important. And then you're like, okay, let me design a system around that. So I think that's where it starts for sure.
I love that. So it's about listening and understanding to your people, and then bringing their needs and aspirations into the system. And of course, one of the benefits I say is when we do that systems design through that people-centric lens, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, is it creates this alignment between the needs of the organization and the strategic objectives and the needs of the workforce. It almost becomes this sort of unifying alignment between those two, sometimes separate factions. Again, I don't know if you have seen those benefits or any other additional benefits of a people-centric approach to systems design.
One of the biggest benefits to that is that people feel like they have built the system with you. Because if you bring people on the journey with you and they feel like they have contributed to bringing the system to life, they feel more personally attached to the idea of making that system successful. So a lot of the initiatives that I try to do, and kind of different things that I try to build, the stakeholder management there of bringing as many middle management or senior leadership, as many people as possible into the process, so that they act as the engine of the process and not as the blocker of the process, or as somebody who feels, oh my God, this is being done to me. They feel like, oh my God, I am doing this for the greater good. And I think that mentality can be really transformational there, or it can be the ceiling.
Well, I love that. And I think it's something we'll explore through the session, because that's an expression of us as leaders and people professionals having power with and sharing power with people, rather than exercising power over and using the system to exercise control and power over people, which is why people often find the system is impenetrably bureaucratic and sometimes working against them. And I love that concept of ownership, empowerment, voice, connection that you're creating there, Olia. Just one other point, again, is give you clues for the sort of theme of today. Chief Happiness Officer. Weren't we told as HR professionals it's not about tea and sympathy? How can we move from tea and... No, we don't do tea and sympathy as HR, but we now do Chief Happiness Officer. What's the transition from one to the other, Olia? And what are the benefits of adopting positive psychology in your work as a people professional?
The thing that actually got me to be in HR was running a positive psychology program within my company. And I wasn't working in HR before, but I have run this positive psychology program to help people use some positive psychology tips and tricks to improve their well-being at work. That's a side story. I'm not going to go into that. What I was going to say, though, that Chief Happiness Officer kind of certification and that whole journey and the studying for it gave me this incredible insight that I like to share with other people, is that when you talk about HR and when you talk about people, when you run surveys, engagement surveys, different things, just keep an eye on the questions you're asking. How satisfied are you with this? How satisfied are you about that? You're measuring like the bare minimum. Like, I'm satisfied, I'm really satisfied. I can be extremely satisfied, but I'm still just satisfied. And there is a difference between being satisfied and being happy about something. And I think this jump between being satisfied and being happy is what is so intrinsic to a particular individual, what makes them motivated about being there, what makes them excited personally on a personal level for being there, and what makes them bring this extra mile to every interaction they do at work. So building systems that make people happy is just that extra push, that extra mile that I really recommend to have a look. I love that program so much. It was quite transformational for me just to even understand that there is this gap between the satisfied and the happy. Nobody talks about that.
We're going to talk about that today, Olia. I think we've already begun that conversation. Thank you so much. We've talked systems, people-centered processes, the importance of happiness, discretionary effort, ownership, engagement, and we've only just got started. Olia, thank you for setting the bar high on our first conversation. I know we're going to have a very rich discussion today. And Hadar, I'm going to come over to you, Hadar Cohen. How are you?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. Very excited to join.
Amazing. Well, thank you for joining us, and really interested to hear how you're making culture everybody's business, Hadar, and find out a little bit more about you and your work.
Okay, sure. So first I'll introduce myself a bit. My name is Hadar. I'm from Israel. I'm a people and culture lead. I just finished actually working in a global gaming company called Valley Group. And I'll start with saying that people and culture is all about creating an environment that enable people to collaborate, enable people to communicate, to feel trust, and to get the best out of them, and feel belong to something as a group, as an organization, as a group. And once you feel belong to something, that's enable you to get the best version of yourself, to push forward for growth, for development, and things like that. And I'm coming from a background of global companies. I'm very into people and culture. I really enthusiastic by anthropology and cross-cultural and diversity. I love this kind of environment, and with these challenges. And through all my career, I'm in the HR business for about 15 years already, and that's how old I am. And I used to work mainly in global companies, and this is where my passion is. And why is it like that? I'm a people person. I love to connect between people, although the diversity in that. And I think in global companies, you can see it even more. But, and I will tell you a bit about my tips from my last workplace, who was very, very challenging. And I learned a really important lesson. So in my last company, I used to work a lot in Israel, in Europe, in America, like the regular Western organization that we are familiar with. But in this company, I had the amazing opportunity to work for the first time with Africa. And actually, to be more specific, with Congo. And I saw in the audience that we have some participants from Congo. So hello to you. And it's very, very, I was very exciting to see that you are here. And I would say, I came with my experience saying, I'm experienced, I know how to work globally, and I have my HR experience, and let's bring it on and let's start working. And in the first few months in the company, my colleagues from Africa, they were really nice to me, and they kept on saying, yes to my initiatives. I mean, they kept on saying, yes, but you don't really understand Africa. And okay, that was really nice. And then after a few months, I traveled there, and I decided to meet them face to face, to meet my colleagues, to meet my employees who are located in Congo, both in Brazzaville and Kinshasa. And then I got to learn that I get to understand how much I don't understand Africa. And that was a lesson in being humble. And I think that's a very important lesson in working in a diverse company, in a diverse environment. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a global environment. I think we are all different. Even in my own country, we are different from each other. We come from different backgrounds, different work ethic, different values. And especially in global companies, you also have the cultural gaps. And I had even a language barrier. I don't speak French. In Congo, they speak mostly French. There were lots of barriers. But the number one lesson, and that would be my 2 cents for you guys here, is to be humble, to understand that you don't understand. And remember the first, I would say, anthropology lesson I had in my university back then, that there isn't a right or wrong culture. There isn't a bad or good culture. It's just different. And once you acknowledge these differences, then you can build trust. Then you can build relationship. Then you, once you enable people to be heard, and Olia talked about it earlier. When I travel there, I enable people to be heard, to learn what they're doing, to understand how they operate, which is different from what I'm used to, and it's okay. It's not better or good. It's just different. Once you acknowledge that, once you understand the other side, then you can start work together. So that would be my number one tip for this group. Be humble, and maybe I'll continue about the methodology. I went from after this lesson, then after I heard the people, together with that, I did an engagement survey. I tried to understand the gaps, and it was the first time we did an engagement survey. It was the first time people were listening to this part of the organization located in Africa. The rest of the organization was located in Europe, and their voices were being heard. And before I even, review the results of the survey, the fact that people's voices were being heard, that was significant stage in the relationship, in the building trust part. So and of course I reviewed the results, and the number one gap was communication. How surprising. And that was the main focus I did, other than hear what they have to say, also to make this part of the organization feel belong to the rest of the group. Because as I mentioned, they speak a different language. They speak French, and the rest of the organization spoke English. So we start with having town halls in English, yes, because most of us speak English, but we use technology to enable us translations option. We did newsletters and send it also to this part of the organization with French translation to make them feel part of something. All kind of things that let them be part of something bigger. Let them collaborate with the rest of the organization, understand their part in the big picture. People feel appreciated, people feel valued, and people can engage much more, I think, in this way. That was my experience from the past experience, and I think this is the main thing I want to mention for you guys. Listen to the employees, listen to people in general, and be humble. That would be the conclusion.
I love that. I've taken so much away from that. It's such a powerful view. I mean, my background is in mediation and restorative practice, and I've worked with hundreds, if not thousands, of parties in disputes, and all they ever say is the same thing. It's the same thing every time. It's universal. If only someone would listen to me. And they say, well, and you're listening to me. I think, well, I can't be the first person in this situation who's listened. They said, yeah, the first person who's really sat down and given me a voice, valued me without judging me. And it's such an important message, that it's such an important need that we have at work, is to be heard. And one of my questions, Hadar, is looking at your 15 years experience in HR, we know that HR has sometimes been bound by rules and regulations and processes and systems. And sometimes they have taken dialogue out of our organizations and replaced it with, you talked about there being no right or wrong and no absolutes. And sometimes the process to work needs a right or wrong answer, and it needs a kind of an absolute position in the process. Have you ever found your desire for humility, building trust, giving employees voice has come into conflict with or challenged some of the status quo around the processes and the policies and the rules that exist within the HR process? And if so, how did you overcome them?
I think, yes, it happened. I believe it happened to all of us in this stage or another. And it comes back to feel trust and have good communication. Once you understand the reasons behind this process or another, people feel that they can collaborate with it much easier. Yeah. They feel the reason behind it. They feel that they trust the organization, why the organization decided to do this process or another. Once the communication is not working well enough, once people are not engaged enough or not feel that they can trust what we call the company, the organization, then you have these gaps and you have these doubts, and people, it's hard for them to collaborate. So coming back to communication, it's number one thing for me. You need to communicate, and of course you need to stand behind it in order to believe this process or another. I have my justice. We spoke about justice. I have my values. I wouldn't promote a process which I don't believe in.
I love that. And it's communication, it's giving dialogue primacy in the system. And I think that's such an important call to action for us, is how do we create those spaces for dialogue, listening, hearing, communicating, understanding, and the outcomes you've set out so beautifully and clearly in terms of the advantages that are delivered for our organizations when we do that. And great work in the work in Congo as well, and leaning into that, because it's challenging. Sometimes humility can be very challenging. Sometimes when we are challenged, we can find ourselves becoming more autocratic and pushing an agenda. And it sounds like you lent into that, Hadar, and it sounds like it delivered really powerful benefits.
Thank you very much.
Amazing, Hadar. Thank you. So I love these panels. They're so fantastic. I hope you're enjoying listening to the panel debate. If you're joining us live on LinkedIn, please do introduce yourself, say hello. If you've got a question for any of our panelists, please let us know. Or even if there's any work that you're doing to develop systems, processes, structures, to give your employees voice, to listen, to communicate, please do share what you're doing in your organizations. We would absolutely love to hear from you, and we do try and respond to all of the questions and comments as they're coming in. So thank you everybody so far, and what a great conversation. And Kantadar, I'm coming to yourself now, and how are you?
Good morning, good afternoon everyone, and thanks David for the introduction as well as getting me here.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good at my end, and then starting a little bit unlike Heather and Olia, who had the pleasure and privilege of born and raised in PNC. I'm a bit of a kindly adopted child in this function who made a cross-functional move coming from business development and supply chain. Having said that, I've been with the function for last 13 years, and currently I'm working for Philip Morris in the scope of labor relations, global labor relations, supporting multiple geographies in Australia, New Zealand, Far East, South Asia, Central Asia, Middle East, Africa. Prior to that, I have had the luxury of being exposed to multiple people and culture fronts in integrated talent management, people engagement, business partnering, and more importantly, as the discussion point today being the cultural transformation. I am often asked that what coming from business development, moving into supply chain, and eventually landing and staying with people and culture, what was the success recipe of this function that held me? My standard reply being that look, the equation or the variables that we are dealing with, and some of the question that comes to me and on a day-to-day basis, on a year-on-year basis, on how we are getting our people ready to make sure that they're having the right capability in line with their aspiration, their career growth, and from a business standpoint, the succession that is always ready to keep driving the business. It's not as simple as 2 plus 2. It's an evolution from a topic standpoint. Second, how do we make sure that all of us, and then I work for a company which is above 80,000 people across the geographies, how are we ensuring that everyone wakes up in the morning, comes to work, and give their best? It's not a simple question to be answered, but that's an interesting question to look into, because once we have the power of people, and I'm a strong believer of that the companies are not changing the industries, it's the people behind that makes a difference happen. So how do we make sure that people bring their best every day, day in and day out? And lastly, well, not lastly, but in the top three, lastly, that what's that red string of culture that holds everything together, which is the catalyst of success for the people, for the business, and it's perfectly designed for the outcome that we expect. And I think, as Heather mentioned, there's no right or wrong culture, but from a context of the organization standpoint, the culture is enabling the success of people and business, and that's a contextualization of one corporation to the other corporation. With Olia looking after the tech industry, I'm sure some nuances of the culture will be different to for us, for example, who are more into manufacturing, distribution, and then trying to shake the industry from a very traditional, conventional cigarette products to a future which is smoke-free, moving the whole industry and our consumers and ourselves in the journey, leading that transformation not only internally but externally as well. So the nuances of the culture and the ways of working have to be different. So these are some of the areas that always held me tight, always made me wake up and bring my best to the organization, to the profession that I'm part of. And little bit about the company itself. For those who are not aware, Philip Morris International, we have been known for tobacco and cigarettes predominantly until 10 years ago, when we came out and made a bold statement that we would like to have a future with smoke-free, which is smoke-free. And we started launching the products and started either helping people, let's say, quit, and if those who are not, let's say, would not like to quit and would like to otherwise continue, they should have the opportunity for better alternatives. And we have lots of science-based, research-based products that we started bringing to the market, and then started collaborating with the governments, with the regulatory authorities, with the medical industry, so that it's not only us claiming the better alternative, but rather there are neutral parties who observe that. So you can imagine the shift from the industry point of view, and I've been lucky to be part of that shift, not only for the larger good and the great purpose, but as a PNC professional, moving from a B2B business to a B2C business, moving from a very big known brands, and we have been Fortune 500 company forever by the virtue of the brands that we carry. But now moving to entirely new industry, building new brands, helping the consumer adapt with the change that we are bringing in. It requires fundamentally different ways of working. We need to be more agile. We need to be more risk takers. We need to have different ways and rules of engagement, while at the same time, the socioeconomic or the overall external factors are changing, from digitalization to COVID coming in between, and so on and so forth. So how do we adapt all these elements into our ways of working and culture, and what needs to be done? So from that point of view, we have come down a long way, 10 years now in that journey. We have, I would say, to say the least, it has been very disruptive, both externally and internally, for the good reasons. And we are very proud that now 40% of our revenues are coming from new products. We have moved successfully to a multi-category industry, which essentially again changes the way of working. We have lots of new people joining us over the journey. And recently, as we celebrated the 10th anniversary of this transformation, we started looking back and saying, look, in the whole process, we started finding the need of codifying the culture, what PMI as a culture stands for. We need to, and that's where we started a little bit post-mortem of what we have done, what has worked well for us, and what will make us successful going forward. And a few, I would say, the recipe on this case, the way we followed, and I do think it's working for us. Number one, we go to the people and we listen from the people, and then we define. And then we define in a way which resonates with the people in a very simple term, no philosophical jargons. We are game changers, we care, and we are better together. These are our three main cultural values. We call it PMI DNA. Very simple to understand. And then let's say the awareness starts from the top. If the leadership, the CEO, and the management team of the global company has the right buy-in, then it's much easier to keep the ball rolling in that case. And lastly, we need to have the right systems in place, performance system, recognition system, talent management systems. Everything has to be converging towards the culture and the behavior that you expect. And last, which we are trying to, let's say, wrap this whole culture up, is we are very good in explaining how good looks like, but do we talk about toxic culture? Do we talk about how the bad looks like? What are the behaviors which are unacceptable? And that's where the grievance handling, the employee relation, as you mentioned, comes into play, so that we are able to call out what's undesirable and we are able to start looking into how to fix those. So that's a bit of my journey with the company and some of my experiences.
Wow. Really, really interesting. Thank you so much. I'll pick up on those behaviors. It's interesting you talk about misaligned behavior. I call those misaligned behaviors, because oftentimes we talk about we try and get a sense of what good looks like, and it's aligned to our core values, which you set out very clearly there. But when we look at what are the bad behaviors, what are the ones that are misaligned, there's just a list of gross misconduct, taking the business into disrepute, stealing from the employer, and so on and so forth. But taking time to think about the misaligned behaviors and what are the behaviors that say we're showing up and having a bad day, and the aligned, it creates that gap between aligned and misaligned. And in the gap builds really powerful capabilities for our managers, for our leaders, for our people professionals to support and nurture people moving towards the aligned behaviors. And we're bringing in some of the new language there: positive psychology, flow, conversations, principled negotiation, helps us to shift. And I just wondered, Tamir, what impact this is having in the organization, and critically, how are you bringing your management population with you on this journey? Because they're on the front line. We know they're the ones who are bringing this to life. How are you bringing your managers with you?
I think the starting point being the power of feedback, and that's where we, on the positive note, so there are two things on our performance management system. Number one, we have two separate performance rating. One is on the what, which is the business deliverables, and one is on the how, and how you operate as a leader. So we really call out that it's not only the business KPIs that will make you successful, but it's also how you lead, how you behave. So we really call that out explicitly, and we have a separate performance rating on that topic. Consequently, your compensation and all the cycles are linked into it. So that, I would say, was a very bold step that we took a few years back. In order to assess the how, or to help the people understand how they are doing, we have the 360 feedback along with some other mechanism, but that's one of the integral way that we make sure that you collect the feedback as an individual, as an employee, to have a bit of a reflection how you did throughout the year from the people you worked with, and that forms an important element of how you are assessed on the how part of your performance. Then consequently, linked to that, you need to have your capability building plans, which are coming back to the aligned behaviors, as you mentioned. Okay, now I know where I stand. How can I improve? So then I need to have the opportunity, and the signature programs across the world have to tie it back to the aligned behaviors that we are expecting, and people should have the opportunity to build those capabilities. It should be supported by the right development planning and the systems behind both hardware and the software part, which makes it very intuitive and easy for people to navigate, and that's where digitalization comes in to support and facilitate and make things efficient. And then, as I mentioned, just on the last side is also that we should be not hesitant to call out what are misaligned, be very clear on how it looks like and articulate it properly. And we should have the speak up culture where I should be comfortable talking about someone who I see is not demonstrating the aligned behavior, with no fear of retaliation and with all the intention of improving the culture. And I'm not necessarily a reprimand as such, because we do have lots of discipline and compliance and whatnot there. But on this specific topic, it is more about how we improve, because culture is equal to the group behavior at the end of the day. How collectively we are behaving will form how the company's culture will look like. So as much as the system will help, at the end it's individual who will come in and day out and demonstrate certain aligned and misaligned behaviors.
But the best systems see those two things working in harmony or in a state of flow and interconnectedness, and that then creates that powerful relationship between the needs of the organization, the systems and processes, and the needs of the individual and their hopes and aspirations. And of course, in there, people function, it's the management function, it's the leadership function, it's the employee and workforce. There's so much I'd like to be able to dig into there. There's a couple of words you used as well, and I'm just going to throw them out there for people who are on today's International People and Culture Week panel. You use the word agile and risk-taking. And I guess when we're talking to people professionals and people and culture specialists, these are words that we use a lot, agile, and we're taking risks, but they're not necessarily words that would have been used to describe historically the human resources function. And I'd be really interested to hear, and perhaps it's a conversation we can pick up after we've gone around and dig into this. How can we as people and culture professionals build on those principles of agility and drawing in those agile methodologies? And also, how do we embrace risk and move from risk averse to risk aware and actually celebrating risk? I really love that. And I don't know if you wanted to say a few words on that, but it felt to me that there were very powerful principles that you brought to your role.
As you mentioned, David, that it's the harmony of the people and the system, right? So at least for us, we had to work on both sides. Again, traditionally, we are a tobacco company, so we are designed to be risk averse because it's a very regulated, and we don't want to be stepping into a zone which is not helping the consumer or the society as such. However, in the new setup, we have better alternatives, and we do feel proud that we can mobilize the society, the consumers, the regulators towards better alternative. It will not come without a risk. We have to take some bold steps. And just on this one thing that resonated with me, at least, we started calling out what is a mistake or carelessness, as I put it, because we cannot also put risk-taking and learning in a larger umbrella of everything and I start hiding my carelessness, for the lack of a better word, under this agility and risk-taking. And so we need to be clear what we are talking about. What are the kinds of risks that we expect, which will help us as an organization to grow in the new frame of business? And then you put together the right framework of PMO or the capability building on agile project management, and then make the infrastructure and the environment that helps people to move on that journey. But I'll pause here. I think we can go 1 hour only on this topic.
There's an hour. I mean, it's just so much. I mean, this is just such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, everyone, for your kind comments and thoughts that you're listening to the panel debate. It's really resonating with people, and it's also tapping into people's own experiences and their own beliefs and values around creating people-centered workplaces. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for your comments, and we'll come back to some of these points as well, because again, there's just so much to be digging into. But Mara, I'd like to come to you if that's okay. Good morning, Mara, or good afternoon. Mara in Kuala Lumpur. I can't remember what time you said it was there, but Mara, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me, and great to see we have so many people from all around the world. Yes, it's almost 4:30 here, indeed. So I'm about to wrap up my afternoon. But admittedly, I'm on a sabbatical for a couple of months. So for me, for sure, after today, no more work. But I thought it was really interesting and inspiring to join this session, actually. So I'm really happy to be here, and while off work still be inspired by so many others. I was actually thinking about the agility and the risk taking, because to me, HR, people and culture, or whatever we ultimately call it, to me, we're the ultimate enabling function. We have the opportunity to multiply business results, to help reaching business objectives and needs through and with people. And I think just by the means of that, we have to be agile, because we have to react on what the organization is doing, and the organization is responding to everything that's going on in the outside world. So to me, that's actually very much to the core of the role. If we skip the part of getting the payroll paid, to me, people and culture is really the conscience of the organization. If we're launching a new commercial plan, we should not only consider market appetite, the marketing budgets, the financial, but we have to think about, is there staff to staff all these projects? Is the work that people have to do actually motivating and inspiring? And I think the people and culture team needs to be the voice for these topics in the organization, in the management, to talk about this. And since 7 years, I'm working as a freelance people professional, after having worked in in-house roles for about 10 years. And I'm seeing a lot of companies varying in size, from as small as 15 to huge multinational like Heineken, where I've worked. And ultimately, I think they're all striving for the same goal from their people side, having the right people in the right place in the right time. But I think the organizational maturity, priorities, and budget, will determine ultimately what you're doing within people. So that's really where I think this agility is coming in. And I was thinking about what I do when I enter an organization. And it's ultimately always creating a plan, whether the organization is 15 people and they ask me to do a reorganization or set up some basic HR policies, or it's a huge company. I'm always coming up with some sort of a plan or a strategy for the people function. I don't use a methodology for that. It really depends on the business needs and on the type of organization. But I believe a people plan in every form should be used to guide the HR professionals in their day-to-day work, and also to agree on what's important with the management team. I was once working at a food production company, really small, only I think about 60 people, mainly production workers. And they were actually making bean sprouts, or sprouting bean sprouts, I have to say. It was a really nice small company. They did not have a dedicated HR person, so they were first looking for someone to set some policies and to create some guidance, and then to hire an HR person. And I sat with the director and I said, I want to come up with some sort of a plan. And he was like, well, is that not too big for us? And I think we do need some sort of a plan. We need some sort of direction. What will you expect of this new person coming in, and what can your people expect of you? And there we ended up with one piece of paper. Ultimately, it contained even some drawings when we started. As some guidance to what the essence of the organization was, and what he felt was important to the organization, and what people felt was important to them. And ultimately, that all came back to being simple, keeping things simple, helping each other, and fairness. And David, you said also justice in the beginning, and I think this is a company, and hopefully every company, but where that was extremely important. So ultimately, we just started writing those things down. It was not a strategic masterpiece, but it translated into a few values and HR practices that would guide us, so that if someone with an issue would come over to HR, we would know what to do and what direction to look at. And in this organization, it means we help you. So if you ask for an advance on your pay, we don't stick to our processes, but we seek to understand what's going on and how we can help you ensure you can get the advance to the pay. But let's by all means make sure that we're not helping you or getting you into more trouble, but that we're helping you forward. Maybe a bit linked to that as well, because I mentioned values, and there again, we did not do a whole value program. And Timur also mentioned this, and I think values are really important to an organization and to guiding your people and culture team. So I think it's really important for an organization to embed their values in everything that they're doing. From employer branding, making sure it's on your career website, it's in your recruitment marketing, but also in your recruiting process. If you say you want to keep things simple, you should not have a recruitment process with 20 hurdles to take. Managers should know how to hire actually for certain values. And there are so many more things at performance management, etc., where we can ingrain our values in. And I really believe if, as a company, you know what your values are and they have the right balance of your true identity and a little bit of aspiration, and you find the people that connect with that, that's where you have an engaged workforce. Everything will come together and really make things work. And then you can continue with highlighting values in your communications, in your all staff meetings, in your events, to praise people who are values champions. And instead of it being very often too many words on a wall, it becomes something that people are truly living and feeling. And also will start to, see and recognize and call out. And I think that's how a good culture ultimately grows and develops.
Mara, amazing! Thank you so much. I mean, you're breaking the mold. I think everyone on the conversation today is breaking the mold. I just was curious, when you're working with a new organization, you are breaking the mold of what you might describe as traditional HR into this much more values-oriented, people-centric, purposeful type workplace. And of course, we've heard so many of the benefits. I was reading a LinkedIn post recently where someone who's in an HR function said, well, I have these HR systems imposed on me by leaders. It felt like they were describing a sense where they don't have agency and they're not able to influence. But it sounds, Mara, the way you're describing it is you have an enormous influence when you're working with organizations to create the plan and the structure. I just wonder, how do you influence leaders to reimagine what the people function might look like? Because they might have a very stereotypical view of HR and whatever that might mean. How do you deal with that, and how do you work to, if you like, inform, excite, energize leaders around this wonderful work you're doing?
Yeah, I really think it starts with listening to them. What's keeping them up at night? What's on their mind? What are their worries? What are their concerns? And very often when I ask this, people start to speak about their people challenges. And I tell them, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear them now, at least. Tell me later. Tell me about your business. Tell me what you're doing. And I think that is the starting point ultimately of good HR, and why I think we should be flexible. And sometimes that can be really frustrating, because then you've seen all these, cool new systems or technologies, and I really want to implement something somewhere and it's just not the right place. But I think that's where in HR we have to kind of, know that time will come when the time is ready, but we have to listen. We have to listen to the leaders. And I've never met a single person who does not like to speak about themselves or the work they're doing, and who does not get excited by that. It feels almost like an open door, but I really feel that's the starting point. And then obviously listen well, because then you're getting so much pointers on what's going on what has been done. And then I think it's fairly easy to open the door to modern HR and to steer away from, the basic payroll admin traditional function that it used to be. Yeah,
it's great, but it can be both, and it can operate in both at the same time. And what I love is the way you've you've shared that. And I just want to sort of shout out Salma. You've shared in the chat function, you've done some great work here, Salma, conducting 3-part workshops for clients on becoming aligning business goals to cultural expectations. It sounds, Mara, that some of the work Salma's been doing is very much aligned to the work that you do as well, helping organizations to create those spaces, listening to leaders. It's really interesting to hear you say that, and listening to leaders and asking them questions and what's keeping you up at night, because of course leaders are human beings as well, and actually understanding what their needs and goals and hopes and you know, the F word of leadership, feelings, might be, and helping them to describe those as well can be really powerful, Mara, to create that human connection. And that's what it sounds like you're bringing, values and human approach. Mara, thank you so much. I think we're going to come back to this because values and purpose seem to be a defining feature here. And I'm kind of really interested to see the connection between values and purpose, people-centered workplaces, and that concept of justice or injustice when we might experience that. But Mara, thank you so much, and really great listening to you. Thank you. And please do continue sharing your thoughts, sharing your examples of what you've done, and of course, any questions for any of our speakers, please do share those today as you're listening to us live on LinkedIn at International People and Culture Week. This is our 3rd fantastic panel exploring all things around making culture everybody's business in our workplaces. But Mark, hello, how are you?
I am great, thank you, David, and hello to everyone. It's really great to have this opportunity to speak about the wonderful things in the world of HR.
Yes, Mark, well, thank you. And of course, you're in Derby in the East Midlands here in the UK. I'm actually from Nottingham. Some might argue the other side of the East Midlands, the better side, some might say, but we'll leave that debate for another conversation, another day, Mark. But thank you for joining us from Derby. And Mark, how are you making culture everybody's business in your workplace?
Yeah, I'll take us on a little bit of a journey, and I'll start with quite a controversial statement actually, which is that HR is boring, as I see it, and it stifles business growth. And that was my opening statement for a keynote speech at the Echo Arena in Liverpool 2 years ago. And that has come out of the journey that I've been on in HR. And you know, ultimately, my belief that workplaces should be great. You know, they should be great, happy places, and people should go to work feeling enthused and motivated to do their absolute best. And you know, if I sort of go through how I've got to those thoughts, I've had a great journey in HR. Sort of started 23 years ago, and I would say that still one of the best employees I ever worked for was at the very start of that, which was absolutely people-centric and collaborative. And I was there for around sort of 9 or 10 years, and then moved into a completely different industry in construction. And what I've come to realize was, in terms of business performance, another great culture, but highly toxic, high friction. It had what it did, and it had the people in place to get the results it needed. And in its own right, there was probably nothing wrong with that, because it was doing the job that the directors wanted it to do. It wasn't doing its job for people, and it certainly wasn't doing its job for me, which is ultimately it didn't make me feel great about the job I was doing, and it made me ill in the end. So and then I moved to another huge organization, which was highly aligned and high control, I would say, through some, you know, carefully crafted policies that gave no one the freedom to sort of work or express themselves or do their best work. And the only feeling I can use to describe that was that it left me feeling quite numb. And then came the present challenge, which I have, which was a company local to me, with a great vision, but it's a 62-year history, and it'd gone through a very undulating period and had some toxic management, and we'd gone through there'd been a buyout within that organization, and there was a few of that leadership team left, some of the best members, and a new CEO. And he just said, I can't tell you what needs to be done, but you just need to make this thing happen, whatever it is. Bring our values to life, which were accountability, honesty, and continuous improvement. We kept it quite short on those. They were brand new values. They'd been chosen by the employees. It was something that was special to them. And try and sort of get the machine going and get a great place to work, or as I said, a great place to be. And that is and I think there's a difference there, because a great place to work is for the employees. A great place to be is something that's coming across in how your employees are working. when a visitor's come onto site, they know that they're in a great culture, and I think that has some massive payback on the success of the business and the revenue that's coming in as well, because people absolutely want to do their best for that business and they feel like they own it, and that's where the real difference comes in. So I looked at the policies that we had. I knew that I didn't want any of that bad stuff that I'd experienced in the past. I was all about freedom and control and promoting trust. I have this belief that a lot of people policy is there to police the many, but it's only to really catch out the few. So I'm all for freedom within a framework. I think the language in policy isn't great. You know, often when you read policies in a lot of workplaces, particularly if they've been drafted from HR hubs, that you'll see things like employees should. And I think, you know, you're right in that the person is reading this thing. They're being treated as this homogeneous lump. That, you know, everyone's weird and wonderful and they're all different. So when they're reading something, they should be reading something like they're reading a story to themselves, and that's how we craft our policies. So there's a lot of you and I and we, and there's a collaborative effort going in there. I looked at the way that we did disciplinary. There was definitely a fear factor that existed within our organisation, and that had come from a a leadership team that were very highly controlling in the past. And I've tried to instill this language of appreciative inquiry. I'm a big believer in mindset. You know, I've done NLP master practitioner throughout from my L&D career, and big belief that just a few simple words, and if you keep repeating those, can get people to really shift their mindset and their approach. An appreciative inquiry for me is, you know, you don't have any judgment on the situation that's going on right now. But what you really want to do is enjoy understanding what's going on and trying to find a solution to it, rather than some sort of solution by interrogation, which goes on in business quite a lot. I looked at sort of, I suppose, the governance of how decisions were made. And it was great that I had a leadership team that supported this, but we have a colleague board and we have a colleague forum as well, and they feed into the way that decisions are made in our organization. So we have representatives from every business area that meet monthly and discuss a voice of employee, and that voice is then collectively echoed up through into our employee board, of which the CEO sits on, I sit on it. And there's 2 elected members from our workforce that are on there as well as some external colleague, and it just, again, it gives that chance for ultimate transparency across our business to be aired at the very top level and discussed. I've done a lot of work around absence management as well, and just driving the consistencies there, but making sure that ultimately people don't feel like they're being controlled and coerced into being at work. I'm a real believer that people should, you know, if they're operating under that cloud of trust or veil of trust, that you'll get your attendance will shoot up, and certainly it's been reflected in our figures, because we sit around 3% absence. So if anything, it's a little bit too low for my liking. I'd like it to be a bit higher, but our reasons for why people are away are very, you know, people are totally truthful in what they're doing in their return to works and so on. Our retention over the last 4 years since I've been in the business, it was at around 26%. It's now down to 6.5%. Retention. I always get these mixed up. Turnover. So we turn over only 6.5% of our workforce, which is a great result. But ultimately, if I was going to say that there's one learning that I've taken from this is, and you know, being totally honest, I made this mistake when I joined the organisation. I went in there with a master plan, and I thought I was being quite clever with a 1-pager, which had 12 key deliverables on it. It was too much, and I've really sort of got onto this execution bandwagon, and I think that's really important. Pick 2 or 3 key things and absolutely hammer it and do it well. Looks like my camera's gone off.
Just what happened there. It just seemed to.
So
you're back. You're back, Mark. You are back.
Thank you. So yeah, execution. So have 3 clear milestones, but have your lead and lag measures in there. Know what you need to do to move that needle forward. And when you're looking backwards, you know, your lag measures, your lag measure ultimately is your employee survey. It's how good the stuff is that you did 12 months ago and you carried on through it. Your lead measure is, what am I doing this week to push that ultimate aim forward? And if you can just pick 3 things and do it really well, rather than 12 things like I did, and think that you can, you know, be a jack of all trades and do them not so well, then I'd go for doing little and often every time.
And that's your agile versus your waterfall approach to your project management. You've got your waterfall just going, or your agile and kind of picking up those 3 things, your milestones, your sprints to be able to achieve it. So it sounds like you're defining your approach very much from some of the stuff that we've been hearing about already around that agility and that agile approach. And I guess one of the sort of question I had is how do you bring people with you on that journey? And you've talked about some startling evidence of the impact. I'm going to guess that some of the evidence-based approaches that you're describing would bring them. But how do you bring people on that journey with you? Because you can't do that on your own, self-evidently, nor is that desirable. How are you bringing people with you? And I guess I'll ask you that question. There is one question we've had that come up about bringing your skeptics, cynics, and naysayers with you as well. So let's bring our skeptics into the room, Mark. And how do you bring people with you generally, and how do you address the cynics that may be going, we do need to have control and coercion because these people can't be trusted?
Yeah, do you know what? It is not easy, and I think in previous businesses I've made the mistake of thinking, well, the people, you know, I remember someone saying to me about 25 years ago, early in my career, they talked about the concept of fallen angels and risen apes, and they said that businesses make the mistake often of focusing too much on the naysayers and really trying to bring those through. And what happens is that lack of attention to your real star performers, the ones that are conveying the company message, they start to fall out the sky. Your angels start to drop. So, and I remember taking that. Well, I remember listening to that. I don't think I necessarily took it on because all the businesses I work for are always about converting the people that weren't necessarily aligned. And actually, I think where your attention does need to go is on those people that are always going to be true to your message and true to what you want. You'll then have that huge people, you know, it's typical bell curve, that huge group of people in the middle who will either be positively affected or not affected at all. And you've just got to hope that your positive ones bring those across by keep banging that drum and being relentless. Now, for the naysayers, I've got two views on this. One is that there is absolutely nothing wrong with people who just want to come into work and do a job that they're paid to do and don't want to get caught up in the sort of glitz of what you're trying to do. What you don't want in the workplace is the people that are really trying to disrupt it and undo anything that you're doing, because that middle section of that cohort, as I say, they can be swayed either way. And they will reach into that middle section far quicker than ever I can or any other aligned leader or super employee can, that's really trying to pull that branding and that sort of positive vibe across. So in some cases it's been a case of ultimately, look, we absolutely promote and work with the people who want to do a great job, who want to work with us. We will collaborate with those that are in that middle section. In some cases, sadly, it's had to be, we're just going to have to remove the people that are causing us some pain and getting in the way of it. And we did that pretty quickly with the current business that I'm in. We spotted some real toxic leaders that were making this a really poor place to work. And we tried, and we had conversations, and the conversations didn't work. So ultimately, it was what I would call a generous severance package that was offered in those cases. You can't do that all the time, but I think that's where clear expectations then comes in and wins a day. And absolutely, what you've got to do is nip it in the bud quick and have some very upfront, courageous conversations with those people.
And of course, justice in that sense becomes then a spectrum of activities. When I was writing the resolution framework, which Roxanne talked about, of course, a lot of the focus on resolution is the dialogue, the mutual Again, the needs-based negotiation, the appreciative inquiry approach. Sometimes the resolution is saying, actually, we've run out of road here. There needs to be a part of the company, but how do we do it while we protect the relationships within the organisation and the self-esteem of the other?
Yeah.
Because we can have resolution, which may mean we're running out of road, but we still protect our own self-esteem and our relationship. And it sounds to me like you're applying that justice spectrum across the piece. And I think, Mark, thank you so much for setting that out and providing us with that clarity of how you've been providing that culture and developing that culture in the organisation. And I want to come to a word that's been used it, Mark, around disciplinary processes equals fear. And I think, Olia, you mentioned it in one of your comments there around fear and fatigue. And I want to go to fear, if this is okay, because I don't want to kind of, I think, as one of the contributors said, is we're very passionate advocates of culture. But the reality is, for some employees, they experience our organisations as a place that does deliver fear. It's maybe the fear of a manager who's brusque or bullish. It might be a policy which feels acrimonious or adversarial. Maybe it's a fear of making mistakes because they'll be crushed if they make mistakes. Maybe it's a fear of speaking out because they're fearful about speaking truth to power. So fear can be a challenge for us, and that can maybe drive some of the behaviours that are broadly defined as toxic. So can I just ask the panel if you share any thoughts about how can people, professionals, address this issue of fear and create systems and structures and processes and capabilities that address fear, whether it's in a broad sense or perhaps in a narrow sense of an individual? Any thoughts around how we can work in that space of reducing fear?
This is
Olia.
such a favorite subject of mine. I talk about this all the time because I find that when you don't give enough clarity, then the brain automatically jumps to assumptions. And as we're all human and our brain biology or neurology, we're survivors.
Yeah.
So we have to think of the worst possible scenario and imagine that that's what's going to happen to us to survive, right? A dinosaur around the corner. So the best thing to combat fear from kind of all these new changes, all the new stuff, I think, is to give as much clarity as you think you can, being transparent in your approaches. And there is a lot of movement right now about kind of making people processes or making the way you work transparent in organizations, and I really do subscribe to that as well, because the more darkness you can take out of the room, the clearer picture people see, and suddenly they don't fear that anymore. They know their way around. They see what their next step is going to be.
I love that, Olia. Thank you so much. So that clarity helps people reduce the fear or the anxiety that can go with that fear. But as you said, it's very baked in primal response to a feeling of being threatened or a perceived threat. Thank you. Any other panelists share any thoughts or any work that you're doing around reducing fear to create that positive environment, those connections within your culture?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that I set about very early on was removing any anonymity from employee feedback, employee surveys, which some people really disagreed with and thought I was going crazy for this, because they said, well, people will never be honest if they have to put their name to it. Now, I said, well, that might be so, and there might be a few pains with this, but people need to be able to trust in terms of being honest. So the direction from me, and certainly from the board that was supporting me, was, look, open up, tell us everything you are feeling, tell us, so long as it's professionally critical, then you have nothing to fear. And we're talking about a culture here where the previous leadership team would hook people out of the business and remove them pretty quickly if there was any kind of dissonance from what they wanted. And I said, but you've got to trust us. The worst you can fear on this is a conversation with me where I will be meeting with you and saying, I really want to understand this more so that we can do better. It's took about 3 years to get to that, but very quickly people did step out of the comfort zones and take a risk in their own rights, and provide us with some great feedback on how they viewed the business and how we could do things. But I think that was one small step that we did, was remove anonymity from colleague feedback.
That's really interesting. Again, it kind of builds in that sort of sense of it becomes adult to adult dialogue. But if we're going to build adult to adult dialogue in the system, there are certain parameters around psychological safety, which it sounds like were being built in at the same time, Mark, of having that space for us to be able to name and talk about the issues we're describing, have that voice, but also the sense that we will not be treated unfavorably as a result of raising those concerns, and that they'll be responded to professionally and in a way which is about gaining learning and insight from those challenges. So and what work were you doing, Mark, to build that sort of psychologically safe? I know it's a jargon term, but what's to build that psychological safety? What was being done on the other side of the removing anonymity in order to enable people to feel safe that was going to have a positive rather than adverse outcome on them?
I think absolutely critical was the education that we're doing with the managers. Because it's all very well coming from me. It's all very well coming from a leadership team that have, been picked for their roles on the basis of their attitude rather than necessarily experience or competency in the job. We just thought if they're on the bus to sort of, if they get this, if they get what we're trying to do, then they'll lead a great team. It was really important that our middle managers who are in the business were also sort of being educated and trained on the benefits of it. But ultimately that they're given the tools and the support. We partner so heavily with marketing in our business as a HR function to get real clarity on our messages. But ultimately I'd say David is following through on what we're saying, and people being able to see that these conversations are taking place in the workplace, and that when that voice of employee is coming through, people aren't being ostracized or in any way segregated from the peers or damaged in any way for being honest. But we'll make examples of that feedback and we'll celebrate it, and we'll apologize, and we stand up as leaders, and we really do take accountability when we get it wrong and we say it.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a fantastic, Mark. I'm going to take that as a sort of final point from yourself there, because I think it just sends a very clear message out to your appreciative inquiry in action there. Mark, thank you so much. I'm going to go around and just do a quick go around, if I may. I can't believe, Jonathan, I saw your notes then we need to wrap up. I've only just got started, Jonathan. How can we wrap up already? But I realise we have been now talking for a full 90 minutes. This has just been a wonderful panel conversation. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing your thoughts and reflections, your experiences, your wisdom and knowledge so clearly, so passionately and articulately today. But we've only got a few minutes, but I would like to hear one final closing thought from you. So I'm going to ask you just for a moment to describe any kind of closing thoughts on what excites you about the people profession going forward. What excites you about the future of the people profession going forward? So let me start with yourself, Hadar. I'm going to start with you. Over to you. Any final thoughts? I need to be brief.
Okay. So I said if we're speaking about the future, there is a whole topic in our world called the future of work that became very talked about lately, and especially following COVID. And there's a lot of things going on there, and I really encourage those of you who are not familiar with this topic, very, very, very keen in this topic.
Amazing. Thank you, Hadar. Thank you so much. That's amazing. And do feel free to share any links or connections.
Yeah, there's
I can see you're busy on the chat function as well. I can't get mine to work for some reason, but please do share any resources. I know people would love to hear from those. Mara, over to you. Final thoughts, anything that's exciting you about the people and culture function going forwards?
I think what excites me, when I started working over 15 years ago, people were a bit afraid about automation. Our work is going to be automated. Now we have AI, and I think what I can see is that ultimately to the people function, it's only bringing new challenges. It's only elevating our function. It's only making human connections even more important. So that general development, what's going on in the world, and the positive things that are going on in the world and the developments and what it will bring to our function, that's something that really excites me.
Amazing. Love that. Embrace that digital disruption. It's a great tool. Thank you so much, Mara. Kanzada, over to you.
Thank you. And I'll actually pick up from where Mara left. And I believe that what excites me is this AI, Gen AI, and all the new things that are coming in. It puts lots of responsibility on us as PNC professionals, number one, to make sure that we are adapting, we are ensuring that we are benefiting from this change rather than resisting, and more importantly, how we are helping our employees, our organization to adapt to the new technologies, the chatbots and whatnot, what's the upskilling, reskilling. So it is quite a bit of work that is standing in front of us, and I think PNC will be at the forefront of this change.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. Very much it becomes the centerpiece, one of the key strategic players in that future of work. Thank you so much. Alia, over to you.
Just a few final thoughts, I guess, with culture and with building culture. We need to help people see the need for any changes, if there is one, and to help them role model it so that they can build the skills of what it needs to own culture and transition culture onto the rest of the business. And then we build those skills up and the system holds those skills together. So kind of that's my last thought. But what makes me really excited is because I think now we're really in this era for HR where we are partly architect, partly coach, and partly an agitator. And it will always be exciting to be in that space.
You've sold the role to me. That is what a fantastic thing to be able to do, and to be able to hold all of those at the same time is just incredibly exciting. It's making culture everybody's business. Alia, thank you so much. And Mark, I didn't want to kind of not come back to you. I know you gave some great comments, but Mark, over to you, and then I'll hand back to you, Jonathan and Roxanne, just to wrap up.
Yeah, thank you. I think we're in. Depending on how you look at it, you could say it's really negative at the moment out there in terms of the political messages that are coming through, and people can feel quite alone, in terms of what they're doing. And for HR, the workplace now more than ever is an absolute, or can be an absolute, life support for the people that work within it. And whether it's HR, whether it's people or culture, we have a real opportunity. In spite of some of that messaging that's coming through at the moment, to really drive positivity through our colleagues, the people that work for us, and provide them with that support and show that we are not just a processing team that moves through human resource. We are dealing with human beings, and we can absolutely show that.
And what I love about that, I think, Mark, and it just aggregates all of the comments, because if HR or the people function is able to do that, so this sort of really interesting outcome, which is people, I think someone talked about this discretionary effort, people feel better, people feel happier. So if HR use this opportunity to lean into that people-centered, values-based, that purposeful type environment, then actually the performance and productivity goes up. And this is one of the biggest challenges we face in our economy, the productivity challenge. So is this not the best time, the potential best opportunity for us to be the best of ourselves, to reimagine the people function, and actually all of the challenges we've been trying to deal with the last 30, 40 years in our workplaces becomes or are addressed as we start to potentially, almost accidentally, start to deliver some of these outcomes. But what an incredible conversation. Thank you, everybody, for your fantastic insights today. We really enjoyed this. I've learned so much. I've been scribbling furiously away here. But Jonathan, I'm conscious we are over time. I can't keep time so good, but Jonathan, I'm going to come back to you, and Roxanne as well. Thanks so much, Roxanne, for your introduction to the wonderful resolution framework. Do grab it. It's free. It replaces, it's a fully integrated people policy. You may have heard that term for the first time here, IPP, integrated people policy. It replaces your discipline, grievance, bullying, capability, performance, and potentially in many organizations now, whistleblowing processes into one single IPP, integrated people policy. It's a pretty powerful system, Roxanne. But Jonathan, back to you.
Thanks, David. What a session. Right from the start, it was power-packed, and thanks to the speakers really bringing in that energy. We had a fantastic second panel on last Friday, and we thought, wow, that was great. And we were like, can we match this? And we did match that. In fact, we probably even did better today. So this has been some really fantastic energy. And I know for all the skeptics out there, we brought this thing about we're speaking positively about this because we've been able to create these changes. But I know there are people watching and who are saying, listen, I have tried my best, but it literally feels like I'm speaking to a wall. And what we want to say to you is don't give up. There is a network. Come to the PCA, join the PCA, network with others who are trying to make it happen, who are making it happen. Get to know how they're making it happen. Understand, maybe how they've created their blueprint, how they managed to bring in the stakeholders. It is a collaboration. It is a negotiation. If you're working with the wall opposite you, it is a negotiation. And hopefully we will try and help you find that window hidden in that wall, and open those doors eventually, and where you can actually have that conversation with your C-suite. So it is possible. I wouldn't say just completely give up on making changes because of speaking of blank wall. There are ways to break that down, and I'm sure we will be able to help you as a community. But Roxanne, I just want you to have the final word as someone who's really making that change happen with Resolution Framework. I'm sure you've got so much to speak about, but a quick summary from your end before we say goodbye.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. Yes, I will keep it very brief. I just wanted to give a big thank you to our lovely panelists and panel hosts today. There are some amazing ideas and processes discussed here, from having a chief happiness officer to the idea of freedom within a framework because everyone is different, and the idea of it being about I, you, and we, and not employees should. I thought all the ideas were really powerful. And thank you to you, of course, Jonathan, for organizing these amazing panels and this amazing week.
Thank you, Roxanne. Well, the next one is tomorrow, the last panel of the International People and Culture Week 2025. Wow. That does not mean they're going to stop making culture every Buddhist business. This theme is going to run through the entire year. We're going to make sure we're speaking to hundreds and hundreds of other people and culture professionals who are making it work, finding those bright spots across the globe. But the final panel is tomorrow at 2 p.m. UK time. You can get some more updates on LinkedIn. Thank you for joining us live. Once again, a big thank you to our speakers. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Well done. Thanks, everybody. Thanks. Well done, Jonathan. And Ollie, thanks.